Well, good afternoon and welcome to our event, Apprenticeship 2025, a bold vision for the registered apprenticeship system. I'm Zach Bourne. I'm a senior policy program manager here at the Urban Institute, and I'll be your moderator for today. We're so pleased that you decided to spend this 7th National Apprenticeship Week with us. Wow, has it already been 7? That's terrific. And we have a great 60-minute program for you today. Before we begin the program, I'd like to just have a few housekeeping items about our program. The event today is being recorded, and the recording will be posted online afterward. You can find speaker biographies at our event website. You may change your settings for today's event by hiding the captions or adjusting the settings with the live transcript button. All participants are muted, but you can type your questions and comments into the Q&A box at the very bottom of your screen at any time, and we want to hear from you. Let's make this interactive today. So send your questions, comments, or suggestions to us. At the close of the session, we'll have a survey. We hope you'll take it. It takes about 1 to 2 minutes. Helps to ensure we do good programming here from at Urban. And lastly, you can engage with us online, and we encourage you to do that. If you're on Twitter or whatever your favorite social media is, you can use the hashtag #LiveAtUrban. And throughout National Apprenticeship Week, we're at the first day of National Apprenticeship Week, the Office of Apprenticeship of the U.S. Department of Labor encourages you to use the hashtag NAW2021. I've already done it this week. Hope you will too. And to get us kicked off today, we have John Ladd, who is the head of the Office of Apprenticeship. He's the administrator. He's also my friend. And John, we're so thrilled to have you today leading the discussion to discuss the department's vision of the new Registered Apprenticeship Technical Assistance Centers of Excellence. John, I'm going to leave it to you to get us kicked off. The floor is yours.
Great. Thanks, Zach. Really appreciate it. And a big thanks to Urban Institute for hosting today's great event. I also want to thank everyone who's joining virtually as well. Thanks so much for joining us today. As Zach mentioned, today is the start of National Apprenticeship Week. There are over 1,000 proclamations and events like this happening all across the country with events at every state. Highlighting the value and benefits of registered apprenticeship. So again, we're really appreciative of Urban Institute hosting one of these great events today. But please check out apprenticeship.gov for more information about all the events happening across the country. And just today, Secretary Marty Walsh posted a great kickoff video that's on our website, as well as a new initiative that we started this week, Apprenticeship Ambassadors. We're looking for champions for registered apprenticeship, and we encourage you to watch the video and visit the website for more information. This afternoon, we're going to talk collectively about where apprenticeship is heading and how these centers fit into that larger vision. I think it's also important to reflect on where we've come and how that played into this larger discussion. So if folks recall that despite the challenges faced due to COVID, registered apprenticeship has continued to grow since the first federal investments in apprenticeship over 5 years ago. We've seen over 2 million people start an apprenticeship program in the past 10 years, and the system is approximately 50% larger than it was just over 5 years ago. We've seen federal investments in apprenticeship grow each year. And those investments are helping to fuel and support that growth across the country and into new industries. But with new growth comes the challenges of meeting those demands, that increased demand from industry, and ensuring that the growth in apprenticeship is equitable for all Americans. To address these challenges was part of that impetus for the establishment of these centers of excellence in apprenticeship that we're highlighting here today. These centers represent new and expanded capacity for the national apprenticeship system, and we hope they represent a new but sustainable element of the apprenticeship ecosystem. Centers of excellence tap into critical expertise in key areas where we know we need additional capacity to support a growing registered apprenticeship system. So in a few minutes, you're going to hear from Zach and each organization about what they're doing and how they're supporting these efforts. But I did want to highlight just a few key elements from each center. We're so excited to be working with JFF on DEIA issues facing registered apprenticeship. As we build back better, we have to ensure that the recovery is equitable, and we need to ensure that registered apprenticeship programs reflect the communities in which they operate and are free from discrimination and harassment of any kind. Building on our long-standing relationship with Urban around competency-based occupational standards, we want to accelerate the development of these national occupational standards that can make it easier for industry to start an apprenticeship program. We're also excited to start a new partnership with SAFL Partners and are looking to make progress on our longstanding goals of better aligning registered apprenticeship with the education and workforce systems across the country. And finally, data is key to all of these efforts and making sure that states and others understand the growing body of evidence that supports best practices that are being implemented across the country and identifying ways that we can replicate them across the national apprenticeship system. So working with the Council for State Governments is a critical partnership to help us move in that direction. Over the next 4 years, these centers will work closely with the department to provide technical assistance to the national apprenticeship system in these targeted focus areas, and will serve as a critical resource for you and your organizations by establishing new partnerships, developing targeted resources and tools that support your efforts to expand, diversify, and modernize registered apprenticeship. So in closing, I look forward to today's discussion. We have a great panel organized here today. Look forward to everyone's discussions, and I hope everyone has a happy and productive National Apprenticeship Week. So thanks again for having me, and I'll turn it back to you, Zach.
All right, well, thank you, John. I'm fired up. So we're going to transition now, and we're going to hear from all the centers. We'll begin with Mukta Pandit with SAFL Partners, who leads the Registered Apprenticeship Technical Assistance Center on strategic partnerships and systems alignment. So Mukta, take it away.
Thank you, Zach. Thank you, John. And also, I'm really excited to be here with all of the other centers. I think this is a great example of us working together at the very start. And again, happy National Apprenticeship Week to everyone. So I'll quickly go over some of the components of what we are trying to do with this center. If you could go to the next slide. Really, if you take a step back and think about our mission, it's really to ensure sustainable partnerships. Like all of our efforts are around alignment. How do we align the workforce in the education system so that we can now exponentially accelerate the adoption of registered apprenticeship? As John mentioned, we've had some pretty impressive statistics to date, right? The 2 million apprentices, the 50% growth. But how do you still take it? There's still a lot of room to go. And we feel that RAPs are still fairly underutilized. So for example, if you just look at the job seekers who visit an American job center, only about less than 1% of them enroll in registered apprenticeship training. So the mission of our center is really to align the workforce and the education systems so that the growth in registered apprenticeships in this next phase is a lot faster, is a lot more, it becomes a much more established model, and we can really accelerate so that more and more Americans can take advantage of registered apprenticeships. Next slide. In terms of our work, we are primarily focusing on providing technical assistance in collaboration with the other centers as well on a national scope. And we will be engaging a lot of the stakeholders in the system and, of course, coordinating with other investments. Next slide. Our approach here really is to go bottoms up and what we are calling learn locally and scale nationally. So the approach we're taking is beginning in 5 targeted states, and we will be expanding to a minimum of 5 more. But the idea would be to work very closely with the stakeholders in these 5 targeted states and really identify practices at a local level that are effective in building these partnerships, and then essentially use that to disseminate resources and technical assistance nationwide. Next slide. Here's a listing of some of our core initial partners. Of course, this list will grow, but in terms of our national partners, we are working very closely with NODA. And with NODA, we essentially have a line of direct communication with over 25,000 frontline workforce professionals. So individuals that are directly interacting with job seekers, and how do we get them more engaged in engaging these job seekers to enroll into apprenticeship programs. With Fastboard and WIA, both of whom are established industry intermediaries, along with SAFL, we are also an industry intermediary for apprenticeships. But the idea is really to take technical assistance for workforce and education partners on how best to engage with employers. We're also working with COABE and also with multiple sort of 2- and 4-year college partnerships. And again, with COABE, we have access to almost 65,000 adult educator members, and essentially reaching the customers that they have for receiving adult education and basic education, and including apprenticeship pathways. NDI, of course, is also going to help us with making sure all of our technical assistance is done with a strong DEI lens, and with a heavy focus on historically underserved and under-recognized populations. In terms of our 5 states that we are beginning our work with, we are very excited to announce partnerships with Texas, California, Missouri, North Carolina, and Iowa. And of course, this is the initial set of 5 partners. We certainly hope to expand that in the years to come. Next slide. And with that, I just wanted to sort of summarize very briefly what our components of our work would include, and primarily around the partnership building, primarily around creating the pipelines and the TA, and now transition to Cassandra to have her talk about her center.
Thank you so much. I am Cassandra Hockenberry. I'm a senior policy analyst at the Council of State Governments. The Council of State Governments is the nation's only nonprofit membership organization representing all 3 branches of state government. And in partnership with Mathematica and the Turnout, we are running the Data and Performance and Best Practices Center. Next slide, please. Through highly tailored technical assistance and data analysis, we will support the improvement of database systems throughout the apprenticeship community. We are going to work on this by building relationships and improving efficiencies in data collections, thereby increasing the number of programs reporting data. And then we are going to use all of this to increase data-based approaches by stakeholders and policymakers. It's really important to us that policymakers, stakeholders throughout the community have a huge say in the work we're doing to improve these database systems and data collection efforts. Next slide, please. And so through that, we'll be doing a number of activities. If you're interested in participating in any of our trainings, please reach out to me. We will also be broadly disseminating invites for webinars, town halls, and reports, so be on the lookout for that in the coming years. But it's really important to us that these webinars, town halls, trainings, peer-to-peer trainings are all directed toward state officials, stakeholders in the community, to make sure that everyone is on the same page about the importance of apprenticeship data and what it can look like long-term in supporting the goals of creating a really great ecosystem for apprenticeships. Next slide, please. Again, if you're interested in participating, please reach out to me. My email address is on here. And with that, I'm going to kick it over to Joshua Johnson and the Diversity and Inclusion Center of Excellence.
All right. Thank you so much, Cassandra, and welcome everyone. Joshua Johnson, I'm a director within the Center of Apprenticeship and Work-Based Learning. As part of that responsibility, I am the director for the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Accessibility Center of Excellence through the cooperative agreement with USDOL. Just the initiative overview here is $13 million from DOL, The period performance obviously is started July 1 and it goes to June 30th, 2025. And the DEI Center, the DEIA Center includes robust partnership with 9 organizations that I'll spell out here in the next in the following slides. Next slide, please. So our goals are simple, right? That's what I always say when I engage my team or when we're having conversation. The goals are simple. When we think about it really here, the goals that we have within the center, they expand employer capacity to deliver those inclusive RA programs. We have to drive that demand also for diverse apprentices. One of the big things is engaging those new training providers in RA, continuing to get individuals to think outside of the box, to think outside of construction and manufacturing, and to look at some of those other areas, those other sectors that are primed for growth and that could continue to support apprenticeship programming. And then also expanding those pre-apprenticeship programs and on-ramps to really get the, to get the ability to engage those diverse populations and support them throughout the registered apprenticeship system. Broker and building partnerships across the wide range of stakeholders, from employers to community-based organizations, to really start to fill that pipeline with individuals ripe and ready to go into apprenticeship. And then lastly, driving growth through demand, educating and informing the supply side, and growing those partnerships and provide that high quality technical assistance, which will result in commitments and action on diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. Next slide, please. And as you can see here, our partners, the 9 partners we have, the 9 partners will help us with creating opportunities to provide high-level quality technical assistance. We'll also be doing some one-on-one coaching. They'll also be helping us create resources and tools for the workforce to utilize and for employers to utilize in understanding how to create those inclusive registered apprenticeship programs. As you can see here, we have 9 powerhouse partners coming across the board here within our center to go along with the 3 other centers of excellence in partnership as well. Next slide. And it's just my contact information there. JFF has been working for over 35 years in economic advancement and empowerment, and we're really excited to have the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion and Accessibility Center of Excellence in our backyard to really hopefully change the dynamics in apprenticeship all across the country. Thank you. I'll now pass it over to Diana with Urban Institute.
Forget to unmute. Hi, everyone. Diana Elliott. I'm so glad you're here, first of all. This is just terrific, and we're delighted that you could join us today. And I just want to say that I'm a principal research associate here at Urban Institute, and I have the good fortune of being a project director with Zach on the RATA Center for Apprenticeship Occupations and Standards. So as background, Urban Institute is a nonprofit research organization based in Washington, D.C. And we have over 500 employees working on economic and social policy research and technical assistance to improve outcomes for people, families, and communities. We have a robust and growing apprenticeship portfolio. And as many of you know, quite a bit of experience developing occupational standards for registered apprenticeship. Next slide. So our prior experience studying and creating competency-based occupational frameworks, or CBOFs, as we like to call them, and helping sponsors on our 2 intermediary awards really gave us considerable perspective about challenges in the system, as well as the potential to scale high-quality apprenticeships. So out of this experience, we have a vision for this 4-year and $7 million award to build a gold standard occupational standards infrastructure that increases the transparency, portability, quality, ease of use, and scalability of the US apprenticeship system. The needs are tremendous for this work. The current US system is really fragmented. Between OAs and SAAs, there are about 30 or more processes for creating and approving occupational standards. So if we can start addressing some of these inefficiencies and to encourage more knowledge sharing, we believe sponsors and others will be more likely to start and scale high quality programs that benefit industry and apprentices. The US system also lacks a consistent process to assess quality. The current system puts a lot of work onto OA and SAA staff who must review each submission. And if a new occupation is elevated for approval, the process can move even slower because of industry review requirements. The current process is really time intensive and burdensome, and we think might discourage consistency and quality across standards. So by modernizing this process, we believe those burdens could be eased. Next slide. So we have proposed overcoming some of these systemic shortfalls through a comprehensive TA strategy to produce gold standard occupational standards in the US in 3 primary ways. So first, we intend to build additional occupational frameworks that smooth the path to adoption and spread high quality apprenticeships. We will create at least 80 over the course of the project, and we'll tap into subject matter experts on our team, partners in the field, and our subawardees. Second, we will create systems for building and updating frameworks in the future. With our subawardee work hands, we'll explore how to create technological solutions that enable easier access and development of occupational standards and allow updates with input from industry and others. Third, we seek to modernize the compilation of standards, including from SAA states, by bringing together most, if not all, standards into one unified and organized system. We'll create efficiencies in locating resources and identifying those of highest quality. Throughout, we'll document best practices through reports, dissemination, and stakeholder outreach to ensure that these efforts live on after this award. We believe that these 3 main efforts will help upgrade, modernize, and maintain a high quality and, importantly, a sustainable system. Next slide. So we're really pleased to have assembled a strong team of urban experts, partner organizations, and advisors to do all of this work. The leadership team includes me and Zach Boren. We're co-project directors on this work, as well as Bhavani Arabandi and John Murata as project managers. Collectively, we're bringing strong leadership skills and expertise on occupational standards development. In addition, our team also includes the talent of many urban colleagues who previously worked on the Competency-Based Occupational Frameworks project and really understand how to advance high-quality standards. We'll also benefit from the advising of Bob Lerman. Many of you on the call, I'm sure, know him, and his deep expertise on the apprenticeship system, as well as consultant Diane Jones, who will be working to advance RTI and curriculum considerations for this project. And last but not least, we're working with a tremendous team of partners and subawardees. They include the Council of State Governments, whose work on the project will include occupational licensure issues across states, Mayor and Mayor, who will be working on technical assistance materials and outreach, the National Association of State Apprenticeship Directors, NASTAD, who will be helping to connect us with SAA states, SPRA, who's going to bring expertise on the standards development process in California, and then, of course, WorkHands, who I referenced earlier, who are technologists who've been developing innovative technological approaches to standards development and program design. We're super excited about this work ahead and the team that we've assembled to carry this out, and really look forward to working with our partners in the Office of Apprenticeship, as well as the partners on this call, to advance the system and make it a real vision for 2025. So now I'd like to welcome Zach Boren back, as well as our other panelists, as we transition into a moderated panel. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Diana. That was a great presentation. Thank you to all the TA centers for your presentations, but we're going to dive a little bit deeper here, and we're going to move ourselves into the future at the same time. So get ready for 2025 questions. And the first one is really this, and we embrace this idea of this this bold vision that we have for 2025 to really reform what the apprenticeship system is, to make it, more adoptable by employers, more workers finding opportunities in it. So, in 4 years, Cassandra, I'll go to you first. In 4 years, when you reflect on the work you've done at the Data and Best Practices Center, where do you hope the U.S. will be as an apprenticeship system?
So in a perfect world, we would have a complete data set with info on every single apprentice. But since we do not live in a perfect world, I think I would settle for having a more complete data set. And in the US, that state, local officials, private sector industry, as well as federal agencies use that data set to continue to grow the apprenticeship environment long-term.
Great. Yeah, it's so important to think about how data is going to inform our actions going forward into 2025. Mukta, what about, same question, what about these partnerships and the alignment that your center will help with the system? Where do you see you all fitting in and your work? Where do you hope for the apprenticeship system to be in the 4 years in terms of partnerships?
So from our perspective, there's a much stronger integration and partnerships of education, the education system with employers, right? So the education system is used, you're having either pre-apprenticeships, you may be having a lot of internships turning into apprenticeships. But there's a direct pipeline and integration between the education systems and employers for registered apprenticeships. Same logic on the workforce system and employers, right? So workforce boards are using apprenticeship as a mainstream talent development tool. There's co-enrollment of BOA customers in the apprenticeship program. And of course, our state and federal partners are also making the wraps easier. But essentially, if you think the employers as the centerpiece, our hope is the education system, the workforce system, all of the other stakeholders, the intermediaries, the state and the federal partners, there's strong alignment and partnerships across so that apprenticeships just becomes a much more mainstream, widely adopted, just a sort of a gold standard of talent development in the United States. And if you're looking at data, once the data center we are hoping to really work very closely with the data center, but I would love to move that 1% number. As I mentioned right now, there's less than 1% of job seekers that visit an American Job Center that enroll in RAP. So if we can get that 1% to 2%, that's a 100% increase. So ideally, we would love to be able to see movement on that number as well.
Absolutely. I love this idea of integration. Josh, I think your center is going to be so important for this, bringing more people of color, people, that have disabilities, women, and just more people into the system. How do you see the DEI A Center really kind of moving our system forward 4 years from now?
It's a great question, Zach. And as we think about it, the first part I think about the DEI Center is we're going to help drive. We're like I don't want to say we're like the end product of the technical, the centers of excellence, the other three, but our center really benefits from the work that they're doing, the hard work they're putting in. And when I think about it, the 4 centers of excellence are going to be working on creating a seamless national system, right? When we talk about Office of Apprenticeship and state apprenticeship agencies, we're talking about creating a seamless national system. And that's where our center will really benefit stepping in, because once that seamless system, then it eliminates the confusion that the employers may have or the apprehension they may have in creating registered apprenticeship programs, which then also, if they have that apprehension in just starting an apprenticeship program, they're also going to have the apprehension of starting inclusive registered apprenticeship programs. So we're really hoping that the work that we do is going to not only inspire, but it's going to influence employers to see the importance of tapping into a truly untapped talent pool of folks to get into their apprenticeship programs that may already be their incumbent workers that work for them already, or that may be out there looking for an opportunity. As we've seen with the pandemic, many people change jobs and many people, have moved on from their jobs or their employer closed. We are hoping that we can get those employers to see the importance of looking into those areas they've never thought about going into before to recruit individuals into their apprenticeship programs.
So Josh, I mean, it sounds like, you're looking at bringing new folks into the system as well as influencing the current system as it is. Can you talk a little bit about that influence that you all want to have on the current system?
Yeah, when you think about it, a lot of the numbers, for those of you who are on the presentation, you'll know that many employers have a lot of diversity at their entry level positions. But when you start to move up into the high skill or move up into the other areas where apprenticeships live, they don't have very much diversity or diversity or inclusion. So we're hoping that we can get those employers to see the value of, instead of trying to go out and find those high skilled workers, we're hoping that we can, through our partnerships with the DEIA Center, to create those resources and tools and to provide that technical assistance to those employers to see how they have the individuals they're looking for right in their house already, so to speak. And we want to give them the support that they need to bring those individuals up and move them into those high skill roles or registered apprenticeship opportunities to give them those family sustaining wages instead of trying to go out and recruit where they've always recruited from before.
Sounds right. Let me turn over to Diana, my co-director, my colleague. Can I ask you, what is one goal that you're seeking to achieve during this award?
Sure. I'm wondering if this one goal is different than yours, but we can talk about that later. So I think the one goal that I have is that there's a compendium for all high quality standards out there, that it's a one-stop shop where you can, all right, good, where you can just grab a standard, so to speak, off the shelf. You can find it easily online. And it eliminates that huge burden for employers and sponsors and others, like of where to start creating a program, right? If you have these resources available, it's just a much more efficient process, especially if they're already pre-vetted, pre-created, industry sort of stamp of approval on them. So that's my goal, is that by 2025, we have this compendium up and running, and people are using high quality standards, like, immediately when they want to. So.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, Diana, when we addressed the National Association of State and Territorial Apprenticeship Directors, this was the thing that they got the most excited about was, give us a tool that we can go out and work with employers on. And, from my perspective, working with companies every day and really kind of putting the nuts and bolts together around an apprenticeship program, this is something that really eases folks into an apprenticeship program, is knowing that something that they really have is high quality. I absolutely love that. Well, what about you, Mukta? Tell me a little bit about, what is the one goal? Like if in a couple of years from now you could achieve one thing, what would you want to put your stamp on?
So we're actually rolling out our sort of one goal today. So hot off the presses, I'm giving you, but essentially we are saying we want to, with our partners and our national and state partners, really engage 3,000 partners. So we're launching a national campaign to engage 3,000 partners over the next 4 years, all of whom are engaged in accelerating the adoption of RAP. So that's the piece that we, as our center, want to be able to control and influence. And of course, a lot of the workforce systems will work with, they prioritize, for example, populations that have that have been historically sort of underrepresented, and working with JFF on that, working with the other centers on some of those components. But really, our hope is establish 3,000 partnerships. Whether it's education employer partnerships, whether it's education workforce partnerships, whether it's a combination of multiple stakeholders, but you're actually saying, okay, yes, let's engage all of these individuals in collectively moving RAP forward. And then ideally, as I said, I would love to see a change on that 1% number, but I'm not sure I'm ready to commit that we can do that alone, but I'm hoping that the 3,000 partnerships that we build on will really make a difference in that 1% number by the end of our 4 years.
Absolutely. No, that is really great. And what I'd like to kind of turn to next, Mukta, you kind of hit on it a little bit about some of the work across centers. That's what I want to hear from kind of the full group here. What ways do you, and I'll start with Cassandra, what ways do you envision working across centers? I mean, we're already here today. We're kind of showing our partnership together, but we want to be doing this 4 years from now and throughout the 4 years to ensure that we're staying in alignment and really kind of thinking about how we really build this more modern system that we're looking for.
I think you touched on it with this more modern system, and for us, for the data center, a huge part of that is providing data and data analysis across all the centers. If anyone needs some data run or analyzed, or just trying to determine where we're seeing improvements, or where someone seems to have a program that's just extremely successful, we can go to those programs, and we want to be available to all the centers to be able to, one, isolate those, but also, facilitate those discussions. Hey, we saw, you have a program where you are graduating X number and at high salaries. What are you doing? How are you attracting, these very successful apprentices? And how do we replicate that throughout the US? So for us, that's going to be, I think, the biggest thing is sort of being the backbone of data to all of the centers. And then we also want to help support the other centers as they are spreading the good work that they're doing. Like I said, our members are all 50 states. And so we are really excited to help make connections and do outreach to make sure that the good work that everyone is doing is making its way out to policymakers across the US.
All right, anyone else want to jump in? Otherwise, I'm going to call on my colleague, Diana.
Well, I'll gladly jump in. I have to say, I'm so excited to hear about the data piece. And actually that's your offer to produce data is makes me so happy, Cassie. So, I mean, I think there's a huge need for data because how can you develop the right or needed occupational standards if you don't have your finger on the pulse of what's happening? So I think that's huge, right? Data will be driving a lot of the work that we do, hopefully, right? If it's not labor market data, maybe it can come directly from the RAPID system, and that would be really exciting to me. With Josh and the Diversity and Equity and Inclusion Center, I think we have the goal of being really intentional about including DEI throughout our standards, right? And whether that's through our template where we want to explicitly sort of, reference how you can make apprenticeships and these programs and standards accessible to everyone and inclusive to everyone. But also, one of the things that we noticed throughout our work on the CBOF project on competency-based occupational frameworks was that in a lot of these emerging roles, there's a huge need for cultural competencies to be included throughout standards. So ensuring that these standards are sensitive and sensitive to the world in which we live, I think is really important too. So relying on that center to help us with that will be really important. And finally, with Mukta's work, I think partnerships are so important to making sure that we are producing standards that have the right input and then will live on long after this award, right? If you don't create standards with the buy-in of industry and various partners, then they're not going to be helpful to the overall system at large. So I think working with partners and creating that collaboration right from the start ensures sustainability.
Yeah, and as I jump in here, we think about it, we think about the system, the centers of excellence as they've been created. And to me, I guess coming as a former state director of Wisconsin Apprenticeship, there's much of this work that the four centers are kind of centralizing and doing. They're doing it in isolation. So what I'm really excited about is how USDOL and Office of Apprenticeship, has come together to kind of centralize that work into four different centers and to say, okay, you're focusing on this, you focus on this. But then in our center, which is really definitely exciting, is to think about many of the things that we're having conversations of, those partners that we have, many who are new to the apprenticeship conversation in general, they do those. We talk about, ICI, UMass, the Institute for Community Inclusion, right? We think about the work they're doing and how they're going to help us to put an equity lens on all of the things that we already have in existence. And you think about, the folks from CWIT who've already been doing this work. And I think that having now these additional partnerships with the centers of excellence, plus the partners that we're working with, we're going to be able to create some continuity. I think that's the word, that's one of the words that I like to use, is continuity and sustainability, right? That's really what we should be focusing on as centers of excellence. Is after 4 years, we should be looking back and saying, we just had 4 years of great continuity, and now we will have many years to come of sustainability from the work that we've created. So that, as I think about some of the work that we're doing, it's great to have those partnerships with the other centers of excellence as well.
And if I can add on to that, I think all of the four centers have the best intentions to be able to partner and work with each other, right? I think that's evidenced even in this webinar. And I feel like as the Strategic Partnership Center, it would make a lot of sense for us to actually make sure that we put in some enforcement mechanisms in place. So tactically, we're going to try, instead of have regular meetings, tactically, we're going to try and have sort of work plans be shared, some of the problem solving sessions be collaborative. And so we'll take that mantle, just from it doesn't make sense if you're trying to do 3,000 partnerships across the country if we can't do the partnerships within the center. So we'll basically take that on. But there are so many specific pieces that we can work with the different centers on. For example, working with the data center on tracking the co-enrollment with workforce programs, working with JFF as we are doing, federal and state, policy recommendations, making sure everything has the DEIA lens, making sure we're working with urban and making sure industry is involved as we're defining those occupation standards. So there are a lot of sort of, I think, good intentions and very specific ideas that we can work together. And I think what we would like to volunteer is that we will also play that process person to actually make sure it happens. Because of course, all the good intentions are not helpful if nobody's there to sort of drive that. And we'll try and do that over the next few months to get this amazing group of individuals collectively problem solving on how to accelerate apprenticeships.
This is a terrific discussion. It sounds like all together we might have this big megaphone to talk about how great registered apprenticeship is and to modernize it. And the joke, among like the apprenticeship crowd is like, we're all the best kept secret. We have this little secret between us, and we've got the secret sauce that everybody wants a little piece of. But Josh, let me ask you, it's all in all seriousness, how can we really bring more awareness and transparency to the apprenticeship system and not be this best kept secret? What do you think your center will do to address that?
So first I have to say, it is like the worst best kept secret ever, right? And for those of us who are in the apprenticeship world, we know the value. For those of us as myself who was an apprentice, we know the value. So it is a joke, as you said, Zach, amongst all of us, but it's like it's the worst kept secret ever. And we're hoping with the DEIA Center is to really start to show how important representation is. When you look across the board in apprenticeship, I'm going to give you some quick facts, right? 91% of apprentices are male, 9% are women, 58.8% of apprentices are white. We're just going to safely assume that 91% that are male, the huge majority of them are white male. So when we really think about the numbers, we start to understand that representation truly does matter. And we have to get the word out to the supply side to let them know and educate them about the opportunities that exist in apprenticeship. Because then once we're able to do that, then we also have the ability now to influence the demand side with going into that pool of individuals and finding those folks who are from all across the spectrum to bring them into their workforce, into their apprenticeships, to create those inclusive apprenticeships. So, we're really hoping that through our partnership, with CWIT, right? They've found a great way, right? With Unidos US, who has not been tied to apprenticeship before, to really find out how we can create awareness and transparency for the individuals they work with, for their network, right? 110, to educate and influence those CEOs about the opportunities in apprenticeship. So I think we're really going to focus on, there's the saying, the low hanging fruit, right? We know that there's already some employers. We know that there are some sectors that are all in. They're engaged. They're just waiting to get more information on how to move their apprenticeships forward. But we're really looking forward to starting to create awareness and show those access points to all the underserved communities. Those access points have been many times, they've either been non-existent or they've been hidden. So I feel like our center is really going to shine a spotlight on those access points for all of the underserved communities, which, once you do that, now once you create exposure and you start to have folks ask a question, the only way to go is up after that.
Absolutely. Just thinking about creating those pipelines are so critical to allowing more people to just access and know about the system. It's not your brother's construction apprenticeship anymore. It's everyone's system. And I think that's such an important point.
And it's creating, just real quick, Zach,
go ahead.
It's being intentional. It's not just saying we're going to do this work and hope. It's being very intentional and being very serious about the work to create those pipelines. Because you're right, it's not your brother's, you're not your grandfather's apprenticeship anymore. So we have to be very intentional about the work we're doing. Sorry, I meant to say that as I was saying, and I just once you triggered my brain when you said that. So,
well, Diana, let me hear from you. I mean, thinking about standards and occupations, this is an area whenever we talk to an employer, how do we put this together? How do we create a standard that's going to meet our needs? Tell us a little bit more about how our center will kind of meet that goal of further transparency.
Yeah, I think transparency alone will be achieved if we can create this compendium and make all of these resources available. I think, as you know, in talking to employers, the whole system feels like a black box to people, right? How do they do this? What steps do they take? I think one important step could just be having access to standards that are easily located and found on apprenticeship.gov, that are high quality, that have already been vetted. So I think that goes a long way to transparency. We don't want this to be a black box. We want this to be as easy as possible for employers to be like, yes, I want a part of this, and all I have to do is take this and adapt it. Great. So I think that would be huge.
Absolutely. Diana, one thing that we talk about pretty frequently is like this idea of really creating a world-class system, like in comparison to Germany, in comparison to what the UK has, Switzerland. And I think this is really important when we think about, our data systems too. So let me turn to Cassie. What would create a really world-class system when we kind of think about your center's focus in on data and best practices?
So I think when it comes to data, it's a twofold idea. We want all of the information that researchers, strategists that they want, but we don't want to make it overly laborious for entry, for the businesses that are taking part, states, all of that. So to me, first and foremost, in terms of data, it's balancing that. Because sometimes we as professionals, researchers, we want information that is an undue burden on those workers. And honestly, if if it is too much of a roadblock, they're going to say no. They're going to say it's not worth it for me to run a registered apprenticeship program because I have to spend, 2 hours on a single apprentice. So first and foremost, I think it's balancing that. It's finding a way to say, yes, we want all of these things, but what do we need and what makes it easy? I don't want to say easiest, but less laborious, less labor intensive on these employers. So that's first and foremost. And then I think once you get there, then it's about explaining the importance of that data, why having that data matters, why we do want you to take 20 to 30 minutes to get that filled out. Because when employers understand how it can help them in the long run, they're going to be more willing to dig into it, help figure it out, because they know at the end of the day, it's going to be able to, feed them back tenfold, because then they have this wealth of information about, success and failure in the apprenticeship system.
Absolutely. It's about getting that employer engagement that really gets us to that world-class system.
Exactly.
Make it a little bit more simplified. Well, as I promised, I was going to move into a little bit of a game show moment where we have a speed round. So I want everyone to fill in the blank. I'm going to start with Mukta. And so in 2025, the U.S. apprenticeship system will be
Gold standard.
Josh. You got to unmute yourself if we're going to hear what your speed round answer is.
I would have lost that speed round. The U.S. apprenticeship system will be diverse and inclusive.
Cassandra.
In 2025, the U.S. apprenticeship system will be a proven success and a path toward wealth.
Love that. Diana.
A force to be reckoned with.
Well, this has been great. We actually do have a little bit more time. So we have about 7-8 minutes left. I do want to take we got some great questions in from the audience, our online audience here today. One that is near and dear to me, I really love this question. How does the inclusion of people with disabilities map into the DEI framework? So I think, Josh, I want you to hit upon this. But Diana, too, will this be a part of what we consider when we think about building out standards as well, thinking about inclusion of people with disabilities? So Josh, then.
Yeah, so fantastic question. As we think about our partnership, just the base partner alone of UMass Boston Institute for Community Inclusion, they're going to be a game changer in the conversations that we have when we talk about individuals with disabilities becoming apprentices and being part of registered apprenticeship programs. They have a 50-year history in technical assistance, research, and direct service as University Center for Excellence in Disability. They're going to serve as those subject matter experts on inclusive registered apprenticeship designs, right? So as we talk about standards, as part of those standards is the design of the program. What does it look like? And they'll be really focusing on individuals with disabilities. So they're going to create some written resources. They're going to do some virtual trainings, as well as give us that equity lens, the accessibility lens, right? We talk about accessibility, to put that lens on a lot of the work we're doing and the technical assistance. So it will play a very, very key part in raising the bar for employers on getting individuals with disabilities into their apprenticeship programs.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, I think having input from people with disabilities or from employers or organizations like what Josh referenced about how to make occupations and standards and what we create more inclusive, I think is hugely important. So that will be part of where we move forward as well in the Occupational Standards Center.
And continuing on this frame of thinking, we got some more questions in. Folks are really interested in, folks that have been involved in the juvenile justice system. They're also really interested in how we support transitioning service members and veterans. Mukta, Cassie, can you all address some of those?
So really quickly, just I always like to note when it comes to juvenile justice, I was a public defender for a long time. So that's something that is like near and dear to my heart. So in terms of juvenile justice and sort of the transition from the military, that is something I will say really quickly that the US military only provides quarterly aggregate data to the Department of Labor. And if I am able to change that in these next 4 years, I will run a victory lap around the world. But I think that's part of something that's really, really important as we're talking about transitioning military. It's about a few things, including training within the military, because a lot of that training can and should be accepted into apprenticeship programs, but just because of the way military standards are, they may not necessarily be, or they are not transitioned across the states. So that's something in terms of licensing, and that I assume Urban Institute will also be taking under advisement. But as to juvenile justice, something we will be looking at is running some analysis on that data, figuring out where the successes are so that those programs can be highlighted, because I think it is really important. It's a great alternative path. In my experience, so often juvenile justice involved youths, when they get out of the justice system, they need a path. They need something to reacclimate, as well as something to grow toward, something to move toward. And if we can leverage apprenticeships for that, and take really a whole person approach, including how to interview, how to, you know, what they need to do to set up a budget. I think it's really a whole person approach for youths, and including justice involved adults. I think that's important as well, that very often justice involved adults, that started when they were youths, and now they're still justice involved. Let's create a new path, and work with the states, work with the DOCs to start that new path, and make sure that we're moving forward.
That's terrific. I have one last question, and I'd be remiss to not ask it, which is, how are we going to engage employers? My friend Bob Lehrman tells me, without an employer, you don't have an apprenticeship. So Mukta, quickly, we'll do another speed round. How are you going to engage employers?
You gotta speak their language. It has to be value for them. Because employers, I mean, yes, they will adopt registered apprenticeships if they see the value, but they're not leading with, my goal today is to expand apprenticeship program. They're leading with, my goal today is to make sure I have the best talent for my organization. So as long as you lead with, how can we help you get the best talent, you will be able to engage employers.
Diana, I know you got a good answer.
Well, we love working with employers on creating standards, right? I mean, I think you can't create a high quality standard unless you get industry and employer input. You need to know what they want and what they need, and you need that input directly. So that's what we do. And I love talking to employers. So if you're out there on this call and you want to build a standard with us, let us know. We're happy to work with you. Just email us and contact us, and we'll start working on something that you need.
Josh, you get the last word, and then I'm going to close us out.
Sounds good. So we're looking forward to engaging with employers who already have registered apprenticeship programs with our EEO technical expertise partners, Donna Lindhoff as well as intelligent partnerships. They're going to help us have conversations with those who already have existing, as well as those who are going to be creating new. And we're also going to be really looking at those new partners who come in, Unidos US, 110, and also the Center for Minority Serving Institutions at Rutgers, to start to focus on those new employers and engage with them. And, to be honest with you, some of the really good conversations I think will come from those new employers who find out that apprenticeship is not as laborious or as confusing as they truly think it is, when they find out how really simple it is. And once you all especially get those national continuous standards set up where there's not big differences, I think we will really be able to engage those employers in those conversations to grow their apprenticeship programs.
Absolutely. I think, giving employers the tools they need to really create the programs that are well designed for them and that they can implement is really the way we're going to move this system forward, by making it, available to everyone, whether you're an employer or worker looking out there for your next opportunity. I want to thank our panelists. This was a great conversation. I loved it. We could go on for another hour, but thank you for bringing these really ambitious goals too. For our audience, you can find a lot of our future activity on our websites. We just launched our Technical Assistance Center website. It's urban.org/AOSC. I don't know the other folks, but if you can't find them, go find them at the apprenticeship.gov website. And you can learn more about these really wonderful technical assistance centers. We're going to be around at least for the next 4 years. We're available to you and your organization. Thank you so much. And I hope you all have just a really wonderful National Apprenticeship Week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.